unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. I hope you had a nice weekend. How was my weekend? I got new shelves. That's what your late 30s is like. That is excitement as an adult. When I was a kid, partying, craziness. An adult, shelves. I mean, they're nice. To my cat, they're a jungle gym. All right, tonight's show. Gossip. It's bad, right? Well, maybe not. Most people don't like being gossiped about. Except narcissists. Who welcome even negative gossip. That's right, the old saying, the only bad press is no press, is true for narcissistic men. Why is this the case? And is there some social benefit to gossip? Those are things we'll learn in about 10 minutes. Side note, I like reading mean texts that listeners send to the show. You can always send us a text message on our phone number at 1-888-505-6644. The meaner the text, well, the more funny they are to me. And I think the producer of this show, Danny, is trying to tell me something. That I'm a narcissist. After that, white rhinos are almost extinct. Those are those rhinos you see guarded by soldiers in Kenya. Well, there's only 2 females left in the wild. So how on earth are they going to repopulate them? Well, that's where taking a little bit of genetic material from an ovary comes into play. And we'll talk about conservation, ovaries, and fun facts about white rhinos halfway through the hour. Tonight's show, a lot of nerdy science stuff. You're going to love it. Let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. After this next story, you might consider it the Florida of Ontario. A city that might be the birthday heartbreak capital. So get this. In Sarnia last year, a 39-year-old woman broke into an apartment, walked right into the living room like she was part of the family, and helped herself to a 9-year-old's birthday card. She took the $50 inside, which honestly makes her less of a criminal and more like the Tooth Fairy's disgraced cousin, who shows up uninvited, takes the cash under your pillow, or out of your card, and leaves you traumatized instead of leaving you a toy. Now, this wasn't a victimless crime, obviously. There were 2 kids at home alone at the time, the birthday boy and his 13-year-old sister. The sister heard the dog barking, came downstairs, and boom, a strange woman in the living room swiping birthday cash like it was a Black Friday doorbuster. But wait, there's more. She also grabbed a glucose monitor and a bottle of old prescription pills. Because what says fun and flirty in a burglary like testing your insulin and taking expired opioids? Now, at the birthday card thief's trial last summer, she broke down crying. She says she used to live in that apartment and just got confused. She says she thought it was still her home, which is honestly kind of tragic. And honestly, a little bit like walking into your ex's house and helping yourself to their Netflix account and their kid's piggy bank. She also said she was high and struggling with homelessness at the time, which might make this whole thing a little more sad than sinister and hilarious, but I digress. I mean, imagine being down so bad you thought a 9-year-old's birthday card is your best financial opportunity. The judge and the prosecutor weren't buying it, though. They said that the crime was repugnant, and the judge said it plumbed the depths of low. Which, yeah, it is a crime so low. It's basically a gremlin with a drug problem. Anyway, the birthday card thief served her time, 3 months in jail, and promised to get treatment. And we all were rooting for her, right? We love a criminal that gets rehabilitated. We all hoped that would be the end of it. But surprise, she's now wanted again. Sarnia police put out a photo and a plea on social media asking the public not to confront her. Because nothing says we've got this under control from the police, like, if you see this woman, do not engage, call us, and then hide behind a couch. The new charges are from February, where she was one of 5 people arrested at a motel during a weapons-related call. Charges were dropped, but she's got this new bench warrant out. And for those who don't know what a bench warrant is, it's like a parking ticket for not showing up in court, but a little spicier. So if you're in Sarnia and you see a woman rifling through the birthday card section, maybe don't say hi. Call the cops. And hey, to the kid whose $50 got stolen, I hope you had a good birthday anyway, kid. But maybe next year, put the money in your sock drawer. Or better yet, Bitcoin? No, don't do that. That seems stupid. This one's a relatable one. I'm sure you've had one of those weeks where you feel like a bloated goldfish with herpes just drifting through a pond of poor decisions. No? Just me? Okay, well, let's talk about goldfish anyway. So it turns out that in Ontario, Canada, ill-advised people are dumping their pet goldfishes into ponds and lakes and any old water sources, presumably because they believe in reincarnation and think the fish deserve a better second life. And for anyone listening, it's a bad decision, because goldfish in fresh water aren't your average friendly small pets. These things are growing the size of small loaves of bread. Some even weigh up to 5 pounds. That, my friends, is not a fish. That's a brunch entree. Anyway, these hefty little monsters, technically Carassius auratus, did I say that right? Who knows? But honestly, that Latin name of the fish sounds more like the name of a failed Roman senator. Anyway, they're now colonizing local waters. They eat everything in sight. Other fish's eggs, aquatic plants, maybe even your kid's sense of wonder. And despite looking orange and friendly, they are not harmless. No. These goldfish in the wild are tough. They thrive in dirty water with little to no oxygen. If Ontario had a trailer park for fish, these are the ones that would be running the bingo nights. An introduced species that shouldn't be there, and they're the top dogs of dirty ponds and such. Now, fun fact, scientists are worried that these fish could carry koi herpes virus. That's right, fish herpes. It's real, it's contagious, and it's a lot less fun than it sounds. Thankfully, it doesn't affect humans. But it does make you wonder what kind of stress a fish has to be under to get an STI. Is there a fish Tinder I don't know about? Authorities are tracking these slippery squatters on apps like iNaturist. It's an app for nerds who like pond crime, and sightings are everywhere. Basically, if there's water and a parent who didn't want to explain death to their child, there's probably a feral goldfish lurking about. Now, some people say the risks to fish and natural habitats aren't that serious. But let's be honest, no one ever expects the apocalypse to come flopping in at 45 centimeters and covered in scales. Now, to be clear, you should only release your household pets in the wild if your goal is to cause ecological chaos, confuse biologists, and create a Disney movie that no one asked for. Why stop at goldfish? Throw your hamster in the forest and watch it become a snack-sized speed bump for a raccoon. Or another bad idea, set your turtle loose in a storm drain. Maybe it'll meet 3 others, get into martial arts, and fight crime with a rat. The possibilities are endless, but in reality, releasing pets into the wild is just outsourcing your emotional responsibility to the natural environment. It's a bad idea because domestic pets aren't built for the wild. They're built for your living room, your guilt, and maybe a slow death by overfeeding. Don't do it. So to sum things up, if you love your goldfish, don't set it free. It's not Free Willy out there, it's fish gone wild because there's herpes involved. And if you're thinking of dumping your fish in a pond to give it a better life, maybe start by not sending it off like a first-year university kid to school. Confused, unsupervised, and with potential to get infected with something embarrassing. Like what you hear, but just tuned in? Or you're heading off soon and you're going to miss some of the show. Well, fear not, you can stream this show on demand as a podcast. That's right, all your favorite Last Show episodes available online. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. I know, you can finish a domain name with pizza now. I'm as shocked as you are. Why did we choose it? No good answer there. It's just strange. Anyway, head to lastshow.pizza. Find out more info about the podcast and check out our social media accounts where you can give us a follow to stay up to date. When we come back, do you know a narcissist, someone so self-loving, they would rather be gossiped about negatively than not talked about at all? Well, turns out that's kind of common amongst men. The results may surprise you up next.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate confessions and useless obsessions. You're listening to The Last Show with David Cooper.
Some people hate being gossiped about, while others seem to thrive on it. Well, a new study says that narcissistic men even enjoy bad gossip. You know, when people are mean about them behind their backs. Bless their fragile hearts. Why would anyone want people whispering about them negatively behind their back? That's what we're going to look into with someone who worked on that. He's a social psychologist from the University of Mississippi, and his name is Andrew Hales. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Let's start simple here. What exactly is gossip from a psychological standpoint? How do you quantify gossip in a study?
Yeah, so for us, the key element of gossip is talking about other people when they aren't there. It can be good, it can be bad, it can be somewhere in between. But if you're talking about someone when they are not present to know what you're saying, gossip.
But isn't there the old wisdom, the only kind of press that's bad is no press? You know, like, isn't it good if you're like, if they're at least they're talking about you? I mean, that would be the argument for why someone, not me, somebody else, would like if they were talked about badly. Okay, maybe it's me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually glad to hear you say that, because that core insight was a lot of what motivated us to do this study. It's not always comfortable to have people talk about you behind your back. But if the alternative is being so boring that no one has anything to say about you, well, that's not great either.
So your findings suggest that some people, especially men who score high on the narcissistic scale or whatever, actually enjoy being gossiped about. Walk me through how you found that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we wanted to do was to sort of take this core dilemma that we've both noticed here, which is that, you know, you might not want to be talked about, but you don't want to be ignored either. And we wanted to distill it down to its bare essence. So to do this, we gave people a very straightforward scenario. We asked them to imagine that they're at a party, and as the night winds down, people leave one by one, and every time someone leaves, the group naturally starts to talk about them. And when it's your turn to leave, which would you prefer? Would you rather have people talk about you or not talk about you? And we have different variations of this, and we, of course, look at variables like gender and narcissism, like you mentioned, to try to understand who, if anyone, ever would prefer that people talk about you instead of not talk about you.
And the results came in. What were they?
First, let's get the obvious out of the way. People prefer positive gossip to negative gossip by staggering margins, right? Like, people are way more comfortable being talked about if it's positive than negative.
Good. I mean, that follows. How and who preferred to be talked about negatively versus not at all?
Yes. Well, across all these different variations, both gender and narcissism were robust predictors. In other words, exactly like you've said, narcissists and men independently, both are more likely to want to be talked about, even when it's negative.
Why, though? Like, your study touches on loneliness and feelings of social exclusion. Can gossip, even unkind gossip, feel like you're a part of the group? You know, have that sense that, okay, maybe they're saying negative things, but I'm a part of this group, as opposed to, oh, I feel excluded.
Yes, well, that may well be the case. Our data don't speak to that aspect of it specifically, although it would be fascinating to find out if that sense of belonging within a group is part of it. The complication there is, if the group is bad-mouthing you, even if they're talking about you, it may well be an expression of how much you don't belong. So we probably have to get into some of the details there of how exactly they're talking about you. On the other hand, if they're not talking about you, then that itself is a pretty concerning alarm sign that you don't belong.
In my old job, there was this weird, like, Canadian media gossip podcast. And every now and again, they would say awful things about me, and I would listen to them, and it wouldn't really bother me, and it would always shock my girlfriend. But my theory was not that necessarily that I was a narcissist, which I probably am, but I was a youngest child who got like no attention in a busy household with many children, and I didn't get any press. And so as an adult, bad press is like better than those negative experiences. I guess my question is, there could be other reasons why people want to be talked about even negatively.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and here again, the story is complicated. We hypothesized in one of these 5 experiments we did, we thought that if this is about a hunger for attention, any kind of attention at all, well, then it should be the case that if we ostracize some people ahead of time, those people will be extra hungry for attention, and they might have a greater desire to be gossiped about. But we found no evidence of that. It turns out that whether you had recently been ostracized or not didn't seem to have much of an effect on whether people wanted to be gossiped about. Now, on the other hand, when we measured people's overall levels of ostracism, day in, day out, how often do you find yourself being ignored and excluded? For the most part, the people who are ostracized more did want to be gossiped about more. So it's sort of a mixed set of evidence there. So I think there's something to the idea, but it's complicated.
Now, the other side of this, mostly men. Why is that? Why do men seem more open to being gossiped about than women? Is this a matter of ego, social conditioning? Is it something more primal? Like, it seems odd that there's this gender division in your findings.
Yeah, I think you've hit on some of the main aspects there. Men have a very different set of societal expectations. The one that I'll add to the mix as a possibility that we need to sort out in later research, but men are on average more comfortable with risk taking than women are. And I think gossip in a way is kind of a risky thing to have happen about you. If people are talking about you and it goes well, then that's a really nice social payoff. But if people are talking about you and it goes badly, it could go very badly. And because we know men are more comfortable with risk-taking on average, this might just be an expression of their comfort with a certain type of social risk-taking.
It is risky. I feel like there's a certain amount of adrenaline involved, like knowing that they're talking about you, but not knowing what the outcome is. Did the group of friends decide they really liked you more than they did before, or did they decide they wanted to get rid of you? It does seem risky now that I think about it. You know, gossip often gets this bad rap, but would you say it has some social value?
Absolutely. And I think we all know the downsides of gossip. And in fact, societies across history have had a certain stigma around the idea of gossiping about people. But we also know how common it is. Gossip is ubiquitous, and behaviors like that wouldn't be so common if they didn't serve some functions. And there's some wonderful research on gossip showing that, of course, it has downsides, and of course, it can be very damaging to the people who are the targets of gossip. But it has other benefits. For example, the group doing the gossiping, they can feel stronger bonds. It sort of unites them together to have almost a sense of a shared secret or doing something slightly transgressive. It also helps groups communicate norms. So we're social animals, and it's really important to know what other people care about. And paying attention to what other people gossip about is how you know what other people care about. And the final positive aspect that can emerge from gossip is, paradoxically, it can promote cooperation. So I'm motivated to behave more positively and more cooperatively if I know that people are going to talk about me if I behave badly. On the other hand, if there were no gossip, then I could behave as badly as I want, and I wouldn't have to worry about developing a negative reputation. So it's the risk of the threat of gossip is one of those things that might make people actually behave better.
Well, thank you for sharing your study with me. I do think my producer had you on the show because she knows I like reading mean texts about me on the show. I think she was trying to say I'm a narcissist, but I think the real answer is it's more complicated than that.
Great.
I appreciate your time, Andy.
Great. Thank you.
Andrew Hales is a social psychologist from the University of Mississippi. When we come back, how on earth are scientists going to create more white rhinos with just 2 alive female individuals? The species nearly extinct. Well, it involves taking genetic material from ovaries and some wild science, and we'll give it to y'all in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Unicorns are real. I mean, hefty ones with attitudes. Rhinos. And my favorite species of rhino is a white rhino. And we're talking about how they're almost going extinct and how we're going to bring them back through the power of ovaries. I'm here with Dr. Suzannah Williams, who is the professor of ovaries at Oxford University. Suzannah, what a pleasure it is to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you know at least 1 to 4 billion things about white rhinos, and you're working on rhino IVF. Is this like a very niche area of science, or is this something every scientist will have worked on in their career?
It's pretty niche. So we started there working with different species. So obviously worked on model species and then humans. And as you said, I'm a professor of ovaries. That's my bag. And then I did some work working on ovarian dysfunction and realized one day that apparently lots of captive rhinos have ovarian dysfunction. And then went, I've got something I can bring to the table.
How extinct or almost extinct are white rhinos? I feel like this is the stereotypical species we point to when we point to conservation and how, well, humans aren't generally great at it.
So there's 5 species of rhino on the planet. There's the southern white rhinos, about 18,000, depending on which report you read. You've then got the black rhinos. There's about 5, 6, 7, 8,000 of those. Of the other species, we're in problems. So there's other 3 that have less than 100. And then the northern white rhino, there's 2. There's 2 females only. So they are functionally extinct.
Are these 2 in the wild? Are these the ones that I hear these folks with the guns guarding them, you know, to prevent them from poachers? Like each rhino has a little military unit assigned to them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they're at the old Pejeta in Kenya. And they were put there with a bunch of other males years ago with the hope that putting them back in a more natural environment would help get them to breed. But unfortunately, they're a little bit too old, been in captivity too long, and they're just not able to kick it off.
How do we go from 2 female rhinos to potentially creating more of them?
Ooh, so that's where it gets really exciting. So there's a lot of work going on at the moment, and this has been spearheaded by 2 different schools of thought. So one of the things that you can do, which is being headed by the biorescue team, which originates in Germany, is you can superovulate rhinoceros. So similar to how women do IVF. So you can make them ovulate or get lots of eggs ready to ovulate by giving them drugs. So gonadotropins, particular drugs that help in fertility. Then you can collect the eggs from the ovary, so these mature eggs, and you can harvest them like you do in a woman. I can tell you more about that if you're interested.
I slightly am, to be honest.
So that's quite an interesting technique. So what you effectively do is they've developed a probe that goes all the way into the rhino. So it's a 2-meter long probe that goes rectally into the rhino. So they clear out the rectum where the poo comes out.
And you buy them dinner first, I imagine.
Say again?
You buy them dinner first, because that's what I need when I have something like that go on.
Well, they're also anesthetized for this one, funnily enough, because they're big guys. They're pretty hefty, and you don't want them getting the wrong idea at the wrong time. So then you go into the rectum, and you can use ultrasound guided, and you collect the eggs by popping the ovary with a needle, and you can suck out the eggs. So that's how you collect lots of eggs from a single rhino. And then those eggs can be fertilized in the lab, and then they can become embryos, little blastocysts, early embryos. And then they're frozen until you can put them into a surrogate. So they've been working on getting surrogate rhinos so that you can implant these embryos into the surrogate.
Is that viable to take another species of rhino and put this white rhino, I don't know, embryo that's fertilized? Also, where is the sperm coming from? I thought there's no male rhinos around.
So years and years ago, they've frozen down a bunch of bits of semen from different northern white males. So they've got semen in storage from northern white male rhinos. So what you can do is those eggs get flown to as a lab in Italy where they do the IVF, so the in vitro fertilization, so the fertilization of those to make the embryos. And then what they're using is, because these are now northern white rhino embryos, the southern white rhino that's not too endangered, there's still quite a few around, they're using them as surrogates because they're quite closely related. And so there was an experiment last year which ended up with a fairly well-grown fetus. So it got about midway through term, and then unfortunately the mother died from a completely unrelated infection. But then that's proof of concept that this procedure works.
Leave it to the Italians to have frozen rhino sperm. I imagine they're going to use it as part of some delicious dish or something like that. Okay, so where are we in this project? Like, is the goal to potentially repopulate white rhinos just from these two individuals?
Yeah, so this is where, so now that's work being done by Germany. What we're doing is different, and I'll get to that. But yeah, this is the idea that we can generate new individuals that then we can recover the species. So that's the idea. So at the moment, they've got, I think, over 20 different embryos sitting in the freezer, ready to go. But these have all come from one particular individual, and the younger of the two females of the northern white rhinos in Kenya. So those are all in the freezer. So what we're doing in the lab is going on a different procedure. So what we're trying to do is work out ways that we can generate eggs in the lab from the ovarian tissue itself. So when you were born, sorry, not you, obviously, when women were born, you have ovaries, and in the ovaries, you have all the immature eggs you're ever going to have for your whole life. And so they gradually get released and gradually develop over your life and make eggs. Now, when you die, there's still some left, but in those ovaries, so throughout your reproductive life, there are ones that we can get to harness and potentially grow in the lab. And that's the technology that we're working on. So understanding and developing how to grow a mature egg in a lab using ovarian tissue that we've collected, and we're using, again, surrogates. We're using southern white rhino ovaries, and we're working out how to grow eggs in the lab. So that's what we're doing. How
far along are you? So you're just taking an ovary that doesn't have an egg in it, a little bit of tissue from it, that is, and somehow going from A to B. How do you do that? Computer modeling, like Petri dishes?
So this is where the journey started. So back in the day, basically there was when I started this project, there were no publications, no pictures at all of what a rhino ovary looked like from a southern white rhino. So when I collected my first one, and I remember going along, and it was an older female that was euthanized, and literally we took this piece of tissue out, and I was holding it going, is this normal? I don't know. I have no idea if this is what it's meant to look like. So we did a load of interesting documentation, which we've now published, understanding what the ovary looks like on the inside. So they'd done some ultrasound, so within the animal, but they'd never looked at it within the ovary itself and the ultrasound, so in the molecular aspects. So we've done a load of work on that. And we need to understand that to be able to grow them in the lab. Now, these ones were from older samples, so they didn't have too many follicles. So we've done a few bits and pieces, working out new ways to culture them, new ways to develop them, and we're still working on that. But the project's taking a big leap forward this year, and we've had some new ovaries donated to the project that have come from much younger individuals. And so we are really excited to start culturing and working with those. So that's where we are currently at. So really looking forward to where we're going.
If all goes well and baby rhinos are born, where are we going to release them? Also, do the rhinos owe you a statue? Do you think they'll build something in honor for you?
No, I'd be happy with a little cuddle. That'd be fine by me. But no, this is if we manage to get them in the lab. So again, if we make the eggs in the lab, then we'll be able to send them. Again, we don't want to recreate the wheel. We want to collaborate with different groups. And the guys in Italy have everything set up for the fertilization. So we'd send the eggs there for fertilization. And then it would be transferred to a surrogate and keep going.
And where would they be released?
So obviously they go back to Africa, or potentially, I guess, in parks in the UK, where we try and make sure that we can get a good population and a healthy breeding population.
Where can people get in touch with you if they want to figure out how to help with the project to reintroducing white rhinos into the wild?
So there's my email address. You can Google me. You can look at Oxford, find Suzannah, find rhinos. All of that will find me. And we would love to hear from you if you want to help support this project.
Reach out to Dr. Suzannah Williams if you're interested in white rhinos. Suzannah, thanks for joining me so much.
Thank you very much.
Suzannah Williams is the self-styled professor of ovaries at Oxford University in England. Scientists have figured out a way to tell you what your political beliefs are, right, left, just by observing your brain while you buy eggs. First of all, who thought of this experiment? And second of all, what can buying your groceries tell you about where you fall on the political spectrum? That ridiculous study and thought-provoking results after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late night's fresh perspective. The last show with David Cooper.
Is buying eggs an inherently political act? Well, seems like not really, but your brain might disagree. Researchers scanned people's brains while they were grocery shopping, picking out melons, eggplants, all that stuff, and then guessed their political party. And very often, they guessed right. I'm here with one of those researchers. His name is Dr. Darren Schreiber. He's a senior lecturer in politics at the University of Exeter in the UK. Darren, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be on.
Really? You're attaching scanners to our brains while we're shopping? And how do you even make a decision to do this research?
Yeah, so this was a project that a bunch of food economists had been working on, where they had been using a very classic neuroeconomics paradigm of having people make purchasing decisions while they're getting their brain scanned. And they were buying eggs or milk, and they were buying either free-range eggs, or they were buying eggs from caged chickens, and they would have different price points. They would have cloned milk, milk from cloned cows, or from growth hormone cows, or from just regular grass-fed cows. And they would ask people at different price points, which of these products would you want to purchase? And they also, in the midst of this, economics experiment, decided to ask people, are they registered as Republicans, or are they Republicans or Democrats? And turns out that years later, when they started looking at the data, they asked me to come in and help them write the results up.
First of all, the word neuroeconomics, I love. I've never heard that word. I'm going to use it in every conversation I have from here forward. Walk me through what people were saying if they leaned left versus if they leaned right. I feel like there's stereotypes, like the leftist likes the organic whatever, the person on the right wants just a good bargain. I know that's a stereotype, but did they map up to reality?
Yeah, so what's really fascinating about the behavior is that the behavior was identical. So we have these ideas that, the lefties are going to be, going for the free range, chickens and the, organic beef and the blah, 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 blah. But some nice external confirmation. There was a piece in the Upshot a number of years ago in the New York Times where they showed people photographs of people's refrigerators and said, hey, can you guess if this is the refrigerator of a Democrat or Republican? And basically, it turns out you can't. So the results we find where the behaviors are identical between the Democrats and the Republicans in terms of the purchases, turns out that is what the New York Times also found when they did this much larger study. And there was a handful of cases where, oh my God, that is definitely the Democrats' refrigerator. That's definitely a Republican refrigerator. But on average, you cannot look in somebody's fridge and say they're a Democrat, they're a Republican.
I'm glad we're not walking stereotypes of division for the party we vote for to the point where most of our refrigerators are divided. But let's talk about this specific experiment. Give me an example of what someone would be asked and then what the brain scan would show for someone who leaned left versus leaned right.
So what we had is we had people in the scanner, and they would be making choices about, do they want to buy, the eggs are priced at, $5 a dozen and they're free range, or would you rather pay, $7 or I guess in this case, $3 for caged eggs, right? So there's going to be some price discrepancies between the two. So do you want caged or do you want free range? Do you want it at this point or at this price point? And lots of variations on that experiment so that you can get ideas of, where are people's preferences. And I think the reason you're not seeing these massive differences between the Democrats and Republicans is, sure, we'd all like to live in an ideal world where we could get, if the chickens are all happy in, local Devon farms, where I'm living in the UK in Devon. They have lovely lives. But it turns out that, that's not the way a lot of agriculture is done. And you can get, really cheap eggs if you factory farm them. So both people on the left and the right are facing the same kind of financial constraints when they go purchasing things. And they like to have cheaper eggs because they don't want to spend, $50 on an omelet.
But what happens when you scan their brains?
So then when we scan their brains, it turns out that activity in a bunch of different areas that are involved in purchases turn out to be different. So we saw differences in the left insula, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the precuneus, the superior frontal gyrus, and supplementary motor areas. So these are all areas that we've seen in previous studies.
And to the layperson, we're completely following you 100% right now.
Exactly, right? So this is the joy of functional neuroanatomy. And one of the real challenges is we can't exactly tell, given this brain activity, what somebody's thinking while they're doing the task. So that's what we neuroscientists call the reverse inference problem. So if I clap my hands and I see activity in your auditory cortex, I can make a pretty good inference that it's me clapping my hands that causes that activity. But if your auditory cortex is going on, we can't guess that it's me clapping my hands. And that's the reverse. We can go one way, we can't go the other.
So people who are on the left end of the political spectrum and the right end, different areas lit up, even though they arrived at the same decision.
Exactly. So I couldn't really understand these results, and I had similar results from previous papers, and other people had found similar results where we could discern. I had a paper in 2013 where we could tell if you're a Democrat or Republican by how you're gambling. And so again, in that case, the Democrats and the Republicans make the same gambling decisions, but the brain activity is radically different. And we could classify you with like 83% accuracy by not your activity in gambling. You can't go to Monte Carlo or to Vegas and see somebody who's a Democrat or Republican by how they're gambling. But their brain activity was so different that we could easily tell, are you a Democrat or Republican? And the crazy thing is like 82% means that it can't be all genetic. And that was wild.
Could we say that people who believe on the political left versus the political right, what party they vote for, can we say that their brains are wired differently from this?
Yeah, so I was asked a number of years ago to give a talk at a conference on reforming high school biology education. I kind of looked at the phone going, I mean, I took a biology class in high school, but I haven't taken any since. I don't know what you want me to talk about at this conference, but I'll tell you about my research. And the biology professor who was inviting me said exactly the same thing. So wait, you mean we're hardwired to be Democrats or Republicans? I said, oh, I know what I'm going to talk about. We're hardwired not to be hardwired. So the crazy thing about the brain that we have is I'm arguing you have a brain built for politics. So this is not like your brain on music or your brain on drugs or your brain on, hip hop or dancing or whatever else or violin. This is the reason that we have the brain that we do as humans is because of politics. That's the reason we've got the brain we have.
I mean, that follows like ancient civilizations needed to navigate political things to survive.
And Aristotle figured this all out under an olive tree, 2,000 plus years ago. And it took me, the equivalent of like quantum mechanics in a giant MRI scanner with liquid helium and complex supercomputers to do the data analysis. But Aristotle figured out the same thing. So it is a little humbling.
So you're saying you're not born that way. You kind of choose, or you are around and get socialized with a political affiliation, and that causes your brain to be wired a certain way.
Yeah, so this is the wild part, is that we know from studies of identical twins and fraternal twins that about 50% of your political ideology is genetically heritable. So if you look at identical twins, you'll see they're much more similar than fraternal twins once they leave home. One of the crazy parts of this is that from 0 to 18, when you're living in mom and dad's house, like your politics become increasingly correlated with your brother or sister as if it was purely a consequence of socialization. So the 1950s and 60s political science literature was exactly right. We are socialized by our mom and dads to learn about politics. And by 18, you and your sibling, regardless of whether you're identical or fraternal, has similar political ideology. When you leave home, all of a sudden genetics kicks in. And if you have an identical twin, maybe you and your identical twin will become radically left or radically right or, whatever. But if you're a fraternal twin, you and your fraternal twin will diverge because you're exposed to slightly different environments. And all of a sudden we can see from 0 to 18, no heritability. From 18 on, there's heritability. And it's not the equivalent of like a political puberty. It's not that, all of a sudden your voice is cracking when you're 13 or that 18 you become a voter. And therefore it's that you've left home. And then all of a sudden, because you're exposed to this different environment, you can be closer to your own political biological views. And that's true for the identical twins and fraternal twins who leave home at 35. All of a sudden we see that kick in when they're 35. We don't see that kick in when they're still living in their basement.
Darren, this has been a fascinating chat. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Dr. Darren Schreiber is a senior lecturer in politics at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom. It was my assumption, and probably yours too, that psychopaths behave badly when they lost things, like a game. But it turns out people with psychopathic traits, when they win things, they behave even worse than when they lost. Details after the break. I'm David Cooper, and this is The Last Show. Well, it ain't the first show.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Some guys win the game and feel confident, while others feel the urge to dominate. Well, a new study shows how victory can trigger sexual aggression in certain men. So it might not be so much about losing that turns somebody dangerous. It could be the winning. We're here to discuss with someone who worked on that research. She's a clinical psychologist with an expertise in psychopathy. Her name is Dr. Amy Hoffmann. Dr. Hoffmann, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the basics here. What exactly are interpersonal affective psychopathic traits, and how do they relate to winning or losing something?
Yes. So that's a great question. So often when people hear the word psychopath or psychopathy, we think of it as this, unified singular thing, when actually there's several different traits that comprise the construct of psychopathy. So interpersonal affective traits, I think, are what a lot of us think of immediately when we imagine a psychopath. So it's that superficial charm, interpersonally manipulative, exploitative style. It's also the coldness and meanness, that lack of empathy, that casual sadism. Those are the portion of psychopathic traits that we think of in that portion of the construct.
If I had to think about people who show these traits and how it is associated with winning or losing something, we would think that losing would lead to anger, which would lead to these traits coming up more. But in studying this, that's not what you found.
And that's really interesting because our original hypothesis was that for folks who were higher in psychopathic traits, who were more attuned to experiences of power and dominance and more motivated for those things, it would actually be losing that would cause them to become more aggressive and sort of lash out, including through sexually aggressive behavior. But we actually found the opposite. So for the folks who lost, it really didn't matter what level of psychopathic traits they had. They tended to not be as aggressive overall. But for the folks who won the competition paradigm, we found that for folks who were high in those interpersonal affective traits, it actually made them more aggressive. So the way that we sort of understand this is for that subset of folks for whom power is really important and social dominance is really important, when they are in a situation where they feel powerful, where they have experience to win in this competition, they may then feel entitled to exert that dominance by acting aggressively towards other people that they perceive to be of lower status than them.
So walk me through the experiment exactly. How do you find people that have psychopathic traits? How do you test how they behave after winning a competition or not?
Yes. So psychopathic traits are something that exists to some degree in all of us. We all have some level of psychopathic traits. And so the population that we were working with was university undergraduates, classic research population. What we did was we recruited undergraduate cisgendered heterosexual males to participate in a study. And so because we didn't want to be 100% transparent about what the study was to avoid that influencing our results, we actually had a cover story for our experiment. We told folks that this was an experiment about visual spatial processing abilities and media preferences. So what would happen is we would have two participants show up to the lab where they would be greeted by a female experimenter. She would then have them fill out a measure to see how they were feeling in that moment, how happy, sad, how powerful, how submissive. And then the two of them were brought into another room where they were told that they were going to be competing in a visual spatial task. Now, what they didn't know was that this task was rigged. So we had two forms of the competition task. One was much shorter and easier than the other one. So we could reliably create a situation where one person would sort of win and one person would lose, but they didn't know it was fixed. So they would complete the competition. It was clear that one of them had performed much better than the other one. Then we measured again, how are you feeling? Did that change? After that, we told them, all right, that was the visual spatial portion. Now we're going to talk about the media preference portion. So they were told that they were going to be working with another participant at our partner lab at a second location on campus, and they were going to be communicating through video chat. Our camera was quote unquote broken that day. So we told them, you're not going to be able to talk to your partner or communicate with them, but their camera's working so you can see them. So they were paired with a woman, and we had a video of her to make it look like it was a video chat. And then we asked them, all right, you're both going to fill out these surveys about what type of media you like to watch, what type you don't like to watch. And then one of you is going to get to send the other one some video clips to rate, and they'll have to watch the clips. So they fill out their surveys, they exchange their surveys, and they find out that their partner, this bogus partner, does not like any kind of sexual content in media. She doesn't like to watch it. She doesn't like to read about it. Nothing sexual whatsoever. It's very distasteful to her. So then we tell our participants, all right, so you're going to be the one sending the clips. You have a choice of 3 clips. You can send her some or all of each clip. It's up to you to determine how much of each one she watches. So the first clip that they had the option of sending was a neutral clip. It was a video of a man and a woman cooking, and they only saw stills from these. They didn't actually see the videos themselves. The second clip that they were able to send was a romantic but non-sexual clip. So it was a man and a woman flirting, and then they share a kiss at the end of it. The final clip was a sexually explicit clip. The description of the clip described a man and a woman having sex, and the screenshots were commensurate with that. So they had essentially a choice here. They can send this woman who has said that she does not like to see any kind of sexual content a clip that's neutral, a clip that's maybe a little romantic but not sexual, or the sexual clip.
This is fascinating how you set this up. I'm at the edge of my seat here. This is quite a wild experiment. I love it.
Thank you. It was very complex. It took a lot of moving parts on everybody's part, but yeah.
So this clip would obviously be unwelcomed by this hypothetical female participant.
Yes.
But the men would have the option of sending it.
Yes. And so we did a lot of piloting on this task to find out that, yes, folks could tell, this is a clip that she would not want to see. This is a clip that is clearly sexual. So what happened was the participants then could choose how much of each clip to send her. And so what we found when we did our analyses is that 4 men who had been in the winning condition, among those men, the ones who were high in these interpersonal or affective traits chose to send her longer durations of that sexually explicit clip than did men in the losing condition or men in the winning condition who did not have high levels of these traits. And so we interpreted that as an analog for sexually aggressive behavior.
Yeah, like unwelcomed, sexually explicit text messages, things like this.
Exactly.
Wow. And so did the findings surprise you?
The findings did surprise us a little bit. We had actually hypothesized sort of the opposite. So the second portion of psychopathic traits, which we haven't talked about yet, is the impulsive antisocial features. So this is aggressive behavior, frequent anger, difficulty with emotion regulation, and antisocial behavior. So engaging in crime, exploitative relationships. So it's more of the aggressive antisocial piece.
Unwelcomed behavior like this would fall under it.
Yes. And so there's been a lot of research that shows that these impulsive antisocial traits are linked to a wide variety of aggressive behavior, including aggressive behavior, which we had seen in previous studies from my lab. And so what I had hypothesized is that for these folks who are maybe higher in these impulsive antisocial traits that are more associated with problems with emotion regulation, and difficulty controlling behavior, what I thought we would see is that for those folks, losing would actually be injurious to them in the sense that it would make them feel as though they had been slighted. It would reduce their feelings of power and dominance. And so in an effort to recoup that sense of power or dominance, they would then send the aggressive clip after losing as a sort of like an emotional or status repair mechanism. So we didn't end up seeing that. We ended up seeing actually the opposite, where it's men who are already powerful and have been kind of given carte blanche to act on those behaviors were engaging in the behavior.
Dr. Hoffmann, this insight into your study and how they actually work was really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing it with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And I think it really speaks to the importance of making sure we have systems in place to prevent abuse of power in these situations. So thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Amy Hoffmann is a clinical psychologist with an expertise in psychopathy. After the break, a sense of wonder with a recent astronomical discovery. Galaxies can die earlier than we expected. What does this say about our origins? And what did things after the Big Bang really look like? Get out your nerd telescopes and stick with us. That in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Don't let them tell you you have to change. Just because you feel a little strange.
Breaking down today's chaos with tomorrow's headlines. The last show with David Cooper.
Red and dead, and I don't mean on the ground, lifeless, covered in blood. At least not in the normal sense. I mean it in the cosmic sense. Today, we're going to talk about galaxies that lived fast, died young, and stopped making stars before the universe had time to stretch. One was found just 700 million years after the Big Bang, which is basically a toddler galaxy throwing in the towel and saying, I don't want to play anymore. We're here to discuss with astronomer and PhD student Andrea Weibel, who works at the University of Geneva in Switzerland, to ask the burning question, why would a galaxy give up and die earlier than we expected? Andrea, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's start simple here. What does it mean when an astronomer says a galaxy is red and dead?
Yeah, so the concept of red and dead galaxies is already relatively old when people were looking at galaxies more nearby in what we call the local universe, and that did not seem to form any new stars, which made them look redder than other galaxies, and the idea of them not forming stars led people to call them dead, so red and dead.
And in the history of the universe, it's typical to see red and dead galaxies that are kind of old. They've had enough time to grow, generate stars, and then die. Was that our understanding up until recently?
Yeah, that's right. So, in the whole history of astronomy, people would push to greater and greater distances in the universe. So initially, we could only observe galaxies that were relatively nearby. And as we push to farther distances, we also see farther back in time. And going farther back in time, we would expect to see younger galaxies that did not have as much time to grow and evolve. And so as we go to farther back in time, we see that most galaxies are actually forming stars and haven't stopped yet to do so.
So the early universe is supposed to be a star-forming frenzy. So you look back in time using a telescope.
Yes.
And then you find one that burned out really early. And do we have an explanation for it?
Yeah, that's right. So again, historically, people have pushed farther and farther and then started to discover galaxies that had already stopped forming stars earlier and earlier. And now recently with the James Webb Space Telescope, we could push even further. And this particular galaxy actually is the most distant galaxy that stopped forming stars by quite a lot. So it stopped, as you mentioned, only 700 million years after the Big Bang, which is an incredibly short amount of time to form a lot of stars and then also stop doing so. And how exactly this happened, we don't know.
And the name of the galaxy is Rubies UDS QGZ7. Very easy to remember. Tell me more about it. Is it a big galaxy? Is it a small one? How much mass is inside of it?
So the mass of it is like 10 billion solar masses. In fact, even a few tens of billions of solar masses, which is a lot. It is particularly massive so early on in the universe. So compared to present-day galaxies, like our Milky Way, it's not that massive. In fact, the Milky Way is a bit more massive even than this object. But given how early on in the universe we observe it, it is actually one of the most massive galaxies that we know so early on in the universe.
But if it's massive, isn't there lots of stuff in there that can crunch together and form stars? Like, why are we seeing it dead? Or I guess you're saying we don't know yet, but what are some possible reasons?
That's right. So the general picture is that galaxies, through their gravity, they attract gas from the surrounding intergalactic medium, and they turn that gas into stars. And in particular, in the early universe, there's a lot of gas, and so galaxies grow. And as they grow, their gravitation increases, so they're even more efficient at accreting new material. So in order to stop that process, you need some force that pushes the gas outside of the galaxy, or at least heats the gas up so that it doesn't just collapse and form new stars. And this force can come from stars themselves, which are known to have strong stellar winds. They also explode in supernovae, or it can actually come from supermassive black holes, which we know are found at the centers of most galaxies. And they also can create strong radiation that can heat and expel gas from the galaxy.
What's the leading theory, or what's the theory that you like the most for this one?
So I think it's a mixture of different things. And for this particular galaxy, we don't know. We don't know whether there is a black hole in there. There could be one. And we don't know exactly what what caused the quenching, the death of this galaxy. But it's interesting because we know in this case it had to happen very quickly, which is very constraining for models of galaxy evolution and of quenching processes.
Did this surprise you or not? Because we really don't know that much about the early universe. The further back in time we look, the more surprising findings we get.
Yeah, that's true. It was quite surprising, and I think now with the James Webb telescope is really a time of big surprises, because the telescope allows us to see things that we couldn't see before. We can see deeper into the cosmos at longer wavelengths, and this is maybe not so surprising that it keeps finding new surprises.
It's not surprising that it finds new... So you're not surprised by the surprise of it, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, right.
What is quenching? Something that happens that stops stars from forming? Is that what we're talking about? What does this word quenching mean?
Yes, exactly. So this is what I said before. We know how galaxies accrete gas and turn that gas into stars, and so they grow. But if we look around us, again, in the local universe, we can see that about half of the galaxies have stopped forming stars. And so we know there must be some process by which galaxies don't just grow indefinitely, but stop forming stars. And this process we call quenching.
And how do we model it now? And how does this new picture of this early galaxy that died young affect our models?
So the way this is modeled is basically astronomers, theorists. I'm an observer, so I'm dealing with observational data. But there are people doing modeling and theory, and they design simulations where they start from the laws of physics and try to model the universe as it evolves, either single galaxies or even a lot of galaxies all together. And in these simulations, we can also see that galaxies quench and stop forming stars, and we can understand what mechanisms cause that. But in the simulations, this doesn't happen so early in the universe, and it doesn't happen so quickly, which means that something in these models has to change in order to explain the existence of this particular object.
How do we know that our existence isn't in some advanced civilization simulation of a universe to figure out how quenching works? There's a deep question for you.
Oh, wow. That's right. Well, ultimately, we don't know, right? I think if you keep asking why, you reach a point where we just don't know, right? What's beyond the universe? Where does it end? Are there many universes, or is there just one? To all of these questions, we don't have an answer, but we should keep looking for it, I think.
I love that I threw you an absolutely silly curveball and you gave me a very deep, accurate answer to it. Well, Andrea, thanks for talking to me about your research. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Andrea Weibel is an astronomer and PhD student at the University of Geneva in Switzerland. Like what you hear, but just tuned in? Or you're heading off soon and you're going to miss the end of the show? Well, fear not. You can stream this show on demand as a podcast. That's right, all your favorite Last Show episodes available online. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. Find out more info about the podcast and check out our social media accounts where you can give us a follow. Up next, got a bunch of old clothes and junk laying around your house and want to make a fortune? Well, one comedian's got great tips for you, or terrible tips for you, and we'll hear them with some laughs up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Prepare to have your mind blown as we delve into the complexities of relationships, explore the cutting edge of science, and celebrate the bizarre and beautiful absurdity of the world around us. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Difficult today or what?
You're always being difficult. If you've got a boatload of junk and you want to get rid of it for money, we've got an idiot's guide for you because we're the idiots, not you. I'm here with comedian Natalie Norman, who's made a fortune off selling things that could have just gone into the trash. Natalie, oh, what a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. And I have made a tiny fortune.
Tens of dollars, ones of dollars.
No, I've made probably like 500.
Not bad off of junk that you were just going to take to the donation bin.
And I wouldn't say it was junk.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Some people's junk is other people's gold. So it is my gold.
I've often thought that, like when I want for example, I had a print, a beautiful print that a friend found at a lawn sale for $10. It was an old print from a jazz festival in like Detroit and Switzerland.
Disgusting. Continue.
It was a cool print. Somebody in my family who's no longer in my family, stole it and sold it somehow. Yeah.
How much did they sell it for?
I don't know. I asked him to deal with a storage locker for me and to keep some stuff, and he could sell the rest and split it with me. And then he just sold it all, and I didn't get any of the money.
You know what? I've heard many stories like this. You never let someone go clean out a closet for you because they will take full control and get rid of your stuff and then not give it back to you.
There was a lot of good stuff in there, and I'm like, look, I'm moving countries. I moved from Canada to the U.S. I don't want to bring all this stuff to deal with cross-border shipping, and, that's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
So I'm like, okay, it was probably like a couple grand of stuff, and I'm like, look, sell it for what you can and split it with me and keep the following items. I got no money, and the following items were not kept. Anyway, I went to seek out this print, and an original one was like several $100. But I thought to myself, you know what? I love this print. A friend gave it to me. I'm just going to replace it. And I thought it was just on somebody's lawn for $10, and they didn't know what they had. And I've often thought all the junk that you have, if you just knew and had the patience to list it online, you could make a fortune.
You could definitely make, I wouldn't say a fortune necessarily, because a lot of us don't have junk that is secretly worth $700.
I just mean a $10 print turned into, I think I spent $300 on this thing.
Right. So that's a rare, I do think that's more rare than we realize.
Sure.
And we would call that a grail. A grail.
Grail, like a holy grail.
Like a holy grail.
Yeah.
So I have a few grails, by the way, but I do think there is I do think about it often, like, oh my gosh, someone didn't want this and I have it and I'm so happy now.
Yeah.
Not even the monetary value, just like, wow, I can't believe someone else's junk makes me so much joy.
I want a vintage CRT television right now, a cool looking one.
Who doesn't?
Exactly. And you can find them on the street if you're lucky. Some schmuck is getting rid of an old CRT cool TV to play like a video on loop, to have like a creative cool CRT tube television.
Ew, we're so gross that we love that.
I like that, but to buy one on eBay, they cost more than a good new TV. I'm not doing that. So I'm looking on the streets here, and it's just a classic example of if you have the patience to list your vintage stuff, you might make money, but most people just get rid of it, take it to the donation bin, put it on the street, throw it out.
It's wild, the things I have found in a thrift store. Things I'm like I found, there's one thing that I always find. It's an IKEA lamp that is, it looks like clouds.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a 1980s round pendant light. It's blue plastic and it has clouds cut out. And there was a time about 4 years ago or 3 years ago where those were going for $80 per lamp.
And you could find them on the street or at a thrift store for $2.
I found them for like $8 at Value Village, like 3 of them.
So if you have the patience, but then how do you sell it? Do you sell it on Marketplace? Do you sell it on eBay?
Okay, so first of all, if you want an old garbage TV, like you just said, Facebook Marketplace has to have it. Some lunatic has that stored away. It's just waiting for you. It's waiting for you, that TV.
Okay, but I got to spend a lot of money to get one.
I just said Facebook Marketplace.
I can get a cheap one there.
Yes.
Okay.
We even got it. You remember a few months ago, you got a new bed.
Yeah.
You remember your bed? You sent me the bed. I said, I will find that for much cheaper than you got that bed.
True. I got a vintage bed for a little bit expensive and you found some cheaper ones, but they were like far away. This one was convenient.
Please, who doesn't want to take a road trip?
I don't have a car.
Well, maybe it's time to grow up and get a car.
Nobody in Manhattan has a car, Natalie. You're in Toronto where you can actually park the thing. I look out my window and I see like one of those, parking lots with like the 4-car elevator that you see everywhere in New York.
I love those, by the way. Side note, those elevators bring me so much joy.
There's something that's so New York about them. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's like a street, cruddy parking lot with an attendant who's going to rip you off and scratch your car. It's like a scummy street parking lot, but in it are these 4.
They're elevators.
Yeah, and they pack you in like sardines. Like I'm like, what if my car's on the top there? It's going to take an hour for them to get it out.
But it's wild. I don't know how they do it because to me, I'm like, that's like Tetris come to life.
Exactly. Yeah. Not being a native New Yorker, being from Toronto, the first time I saw that, I was just like, whoa. But New Yorkers just don't care. They walk by like, who gives a crap?
No, I think they all care. I think those bring us all a lot of joy.
There is something special about them. And thinking about how stupid that idiot is who's on the top, I'm like, why even buy a car at that point?
Maybe he likes to go buy vintage in other cities.
Why is it a man in this scenario? It's probably a man.
Because it's a man.
Yeah.
But you can list things on Facebook Marketplace, Poshmark, Depop, The Real. There's eBay. We got all of it. I'm only on Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace.
Used lingerie, discuss.
Love.
What?
Love.
But people's bodies, Natalie.
Are you not washing your stuff? Am I just taking someone's dirty thing and putting it on my body?
I mean, does it... Okay, so used lingerie, good.
Yes, but usually I don't have used lingerie with the bottoms attached.
Just the tops.
Like a corset or a teddy.
Okay, that makes more sense. That makes more sense.
I got to tell you, there's no value in that.
There's no market for used lingerie.
No, for lingerie is a hard sell. It's a hard sell. There's a surplus and nobody seems to want it.
It's one of those things. If you're in the market for lingerie, you're paying so much money, but if you want to get rid of it, you can't.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. You're like, I have this memory with this piece of lingerie. I don't want to think about that man ever again. Someone take this bad omen.
I feel like wedding rings and mattresses, other things that if you're in the market for them, they're a bunch of money. And when you want to get rid of them, you can't give them away.
I think you could get a mattress away easier.
You could sell your mattress, you mean?
Yeah, if it's like relatively, I think you could sell it. You're not going to get a good cost for it. You're not going to get a good...
That's what I mean. The second you order it, it's lost half its value at least.
But the wedding ring is like, there's something, I like the idea of an old wedding ring, but I'm also worried, like, if I'm lucky enough for someone to buy me one, okay?
I've been trying to unload my wedding band from my divorce for years.
Listen to me. But you don't want to get a wedding band where you knew the couple ended in divorce because you feel like that's bad luck. So we just avoid them at all costs.
I have a friend who's getting married and I showed him a picture of my wedding band and he has a similar size finger to me. And without telling him what it was, I was like, he was in the market. He didn't know what he wanted. And I said, how about this one? He's like, oh, that's a nice one. I'm like, can I sell you mine? And he's like, no, I'm not wearing that thing.
Of course, that's a bad omen. You got to take that to like a gold person and melt it. Exactly. You got to melt it down. You got to burn the sins out of it.
Yep. I guess I just have it. I mean, I separated from my ex, 11 years ago. I got to get rid of this thing.
If you melt it down and make it to something else, you can give it to me.
Make it into a little broken heart pendant?
No, then I don't want that. Who needs that garbage?
A picture of Cupid laying on the ground dying. There's not enough gold for that, but yeah.
No, the wedding rings, and sometimes you know what else freaks me out? Mirrors, secondhand mirrors.
Oh, weird. That's real superstitious. Like most money you've made on something that you've sold online.
Clothing.
No, but what item?
Actually, the number one thing I actually made money on was a rug.
A rug. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with comedian Natalie Norman, who lives in Toronto. We'll get her theory. What's your theory?
On secondhand clothing and why it's important.
On secondhand clothing and why it's important. That's what I was going to say. I just wanted to see if you remembered what your theory was.
I remembered.
Natalie Norman, up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. This is your nightly dose of chaos, confession, and questionable life choices. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Got a bunch of junk in your house and want to make a fortune selling it? That's what we're talking about with comedian Natalie Norman, who claims it's not junk that she sells online.
It's not junk. And on top of it, it's more than just you making money. It's you making the planet a better place.
I agree. And sometimes when I take my stuff to the Dropbox, I'm like, they're not going to use it. I'm just like making myself feel better. And then they're not going to be able to use it at the secondhand store or United Way.
But they will. There's places that will.
Sometimes a lot of clothes that get donated just get thrown away if they don't need it and they have a surplus of it.
Well, that's really depressing.
I know.
And that's why I believe people should keep their clothing and, trade it or do it online.
And don't take my word for that. I'm just some idiot with a microphone. I didn't actually check that fact.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know what you're saying. I've never heard that.
Well, towels, blankets, these are things they can't use.
Yes, they can. People buy those secondhand.
I don't think, and bedding.
I've bought a towel secondhand.
All right, fine. What do I know? I'm just making stuff up, apparently.
Yes, you are. Stop making stuff up on public radio.
It's not. It's commercial radio, Natalie. Jeez.
Right. So on commercial radio, you can make up whatever you want.
I guess so. Oh, we have to just say, hey, but the following is maybe made up. Listener discretion advised. All right. What is your secret for selling clothing online?
I have a theory and I want to talk about it.
That's what I meant. I said theory. You said secret.
Okay. I just think at this point in our history of the world, we have a consumption problem.
Yeah.
And I think we could close down all the clothing plants. We could stop making things new. We really have everything we need and will ever need. And I think we should just go into big sorting and selling old stuff because it's what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clothes are vintage. Yesterday, I got asked by a guy, he's like, I love your jacket. Where'd you get it? I'm like, thrift store. And he was really upset, though. He was like, I want to buy one. I agree. And vintage clothing is so cool, a lot of it.
Well, it's not only that it's amazing and cool and unique, but there's also so much surplus of already created material.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, this is where I get really nerdy. So we could just take that and make newish clothing, but we don't need to create more garbage.
But then how will the corporations get rich?
They could get involved in the recycling industry.
Except for the corporations that are a sponsor on whatever radio station you're listening to this on. Those corporations are great, but the other ones...
The other ones are terrible. But I also, listen, I don't think this is a possibility, but I think we could all move towards a more recycled society.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that,
If you have a man that's been with another woman, that's recycling.
We already do it. We're accustomed to it. My upstairs neighbor in my apartment building, every day it seems like with the Amazon packages.
Yeah, it's excessive.
I'm like, where are you keeping all this stuff? These aren't huge apartments. I'm like, where? Every day it's a new package or multiple packages.
Maybe that's a person with like a return fetish. So they like to buy and then return it immediately.
Those are the people that the reason prices are slightly higher than they are is because when these companies...
Oh, is that the reason?
Well, companies have to factor in how much a return costs them, which is a lot when they sell you something.
Well, then they shouldn't offer returns. I'm not going to feel bad for these companies.
No, I'm not either. Unless they're a sponsor of this program, in which case we love that company.
Yes. And they shouldn't put it on us. Okay. They should do better at making their products.
Are you a big purchaser and returner? Don't they flag you after a while? That's what I was always told.
You would think. You would think so. By the amount I've returned in my life, I should be banned from almost every website.
I returned something the other day. So I was trapped in Florida last week, and I did this show from Florida one day.
Yeah.
And I needed a microphone. And so I ordered one on one of the big, online retailers that rhymes with Schmamazon. And I used it, and I was thinking of keeping it for a travel microphone, but I didn't end up liking it.
Right.
And so I returned it, but I'm not a big returner, so I felt really weird returning this piece of expensive equipment.
Listen, I'm out here talking about recycling. I'm a very bad person. That's why I think I promote this.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big proprietor of buying, using, and returning.
Yeah. Okay. So that 30-day policy is really just a free rental for you.
1,000%. IKEA is a full year.
IKEA lets you return a thing after a year?
Yes, but it has to be in almost mint condition. So it's a little hot.
That's impossible.
But but also so many of us buy things, we don't use it, we leave it. So that's a great place. Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about IKEA for a second. First of all, there are people out there that love and worship and are obsessed with IKEA to the point where they're posting online about it, and there's a whole community of them. There's certain IKEA pieces over the last few years that have tipped over that didn't have proper wall fasteners, or for whatever reason they tipped over, and they regrettably, unfortunately, awfully injured, or in some cases killed little kids. And so IKEA awful, right? So IKEA has done this mass recall where they'll either take your item, no matter how old it is, and give you your money back, or they'll send you fasteners so you can fasten it to the wall properly. And they don't sell these items anymore. But as a result, my friend was telling me this. That's my source on this, so I might be not telling the truth.
Yeah.
But she either lied to me or I'm telling the truth. But there's this cult following where these specific items, shelves, drawers, whatever they are, if they were part of this recall, they're selling for higher than retail because people want them.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know which shelves they are, because IKEA, interesting enough, all IKEA vintage is very expensive.
Wild. The one thing, I love IKEA for one. I didn't think I would, but just moving a place right now and getting a few things, I went there once or twice and I love it. Although when you're there, you get trapped with no sunlight in a maze. But
I love that.
I hate it. But yeah, I've just noticed when you move with IKEA, when you disassemble it and reassemble it, that's when you start to notice that it isn't the highest.
In it.
Yeah, that's when it doesn't travel well.
But that's the thing. I think IKEA older products are better made, but also they're all postmodern.
Yeah.
And nobody makes postmodern stuff anymore. And it's they're amazing. Vintage IKEA is truly amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there's a cult following. It's good stuff and it's affordable. And the whole my friend who's an engineer was explaining this to me. It's probably going to bore you, but he was saying the whole logistics of it, how it's manufactured.
It's logistics, not logistics, but we'll keep going.
Fine. The whole logistics of it, how it's manufactured, how it's shipped, how it's distributed worldwide, how the pieces are so efficiently made and packed flat and placed on, big stilts and whatever. And the whole process of it being manufactured to you purchasing it is a marvel of human engineering for the cost that they sell it to you for.
Well, that's great. I wonder where they learned that probably in the 40s.
It's constantly new stuff that they're figuring out.
No, but do you get what I'm saying? Of course, they're good at engineering. We've seen some stuff that they contribute to in the past where it was really engineered.
You think that IKEA is German, don't you?
No, I think they were associated, though, with the Germans.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was a purely Swedish company.
No, I'm talking about Sweden in general. I've mucked up this theory.
It's all right. I like it. I like where you were going with it, even though I didn't understand it.
The point is, if you can recycle, it's fine to return products to big companies because they're evil.
Except for any big companies that are sponsors of this program, which are amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing, and do not return to them. You buy their products and you enjoy them.
I don't even know what sponsors we have, but I assume there's some. I mean, people.
I don't think it's IKEA or Amazon, to be honest.
This is the last show I'm ever going to do.
Okay, great. Well,
see what I did there? Because the show's called The Last Show.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Natalie, dates of comedy. Is that how you say that? Comedy?
I don't know. Just follow me online.
Okay, at Stalking Natalie on Instagram. But you must have a show in Toronto.
I don't know my dates. What I know is I'm starting a new podcast.
Oh.
And I say that every few months to you.
I don't know why you announced it on the show. Why don't you put out an episode and then talk about it?
No, I want to tease it.
Get people on the edge of their seat. Well, I could not think of anyone I would rather have a stream of consciousness journey on this program with than you, Natalie. Thank you so much for being here. Stalking Natalie on Instagram. She's a comedian. She is a friend. And she is she is here. I mean, that's the most important part.
And she loves to return.
She loves to return. There she goes, Natalie Norman. Natalie, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the show. Thank you for listening to it. Just remember, we accept any and all mean or nice text messages or voicemails at our phone number, 1-888-505-6644. And don't forget, 7 lefts make a right, I think. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. I mean, it's the last few moments of the last show, which is over. So it's the last show of the day. It's the last moments of the last show, but we'll be back tomorrow, probably. I mean, who knows? Could be the last show.